Oh, well, hello, good evening. Welcome to the show. It is Friday, the 22nd of July, and I promise I'm not trying to sneak out. I pretend I'm here, sneaky episode past you when I'm not. I'm actually here. Hey, Tilly, we're actually here.
Yes, the trick is that you say what the weather is, and I'll tell you what that is
It's
now.
dark.
It's dark.
It's dark. How are you, man?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad.
The world is waiting breathlessly to find out what happened in your first stand-up gig for whatever it was, 20 years or something. The first gig you did last night.
How'd it go? Oh, Jesus. Yeah, it went pretty well. I didn't die of shame. People laughed at some of the things that I said. I guess to give a bit of context, I've been doing stand-up now for probably about 3 or 4 years off and on. And a lot of what I do is just pretty much real life stories, just jazzed up a little bit. But because they're stories from my life, I've never really had to write too much down. I'm just relaying stories. But I felt like doing something a little bit different and coming up with a bit of a character. And I went on stage last night with the intention of being kind of like a motivational speaker who loses motivation about halfway through.
Oh, you tell me that. Did it work?
Yeah, well, it changed. I had an idea. I was thinking about what would a motivational speaker wear, and when I got home, I had just like a rock band T-shirt and an old tuxedo jacket, and I was like, I look more like a tech bro, like a crypto.
Right. Yeah.
So it became that. So I think, I got up on stage, I made up a bunch of nonsense, and it seemed to work. And amongst all of that brain panic of what are you going to say now, I think I've got the germ of something that could be quite promising.
Nice.
So I'll see how I develop it.
It's funny, when you write something to perform, you can never really know if it's going to work or not until you're on stage performing it, and then you can tweak. Do you record your sets when you do them?
I record everything, just because there's so many, when you do stand up, there's so many nice bits in between, say, the scripted or the well-practiced bits. A change in a turn of phrase can send things in a different direction. You're like, oh shit, that really got a laugh and I wasn't expecting it, so I better, and you don't remember. I black out when I go on stage. Like, my wife Claire knows as soon as they come off, I was like, how was that?
Yeah.
What did I say? So yeah, I record everything. I haven't watched it back yet, but yeah, it's nice to be back up on stage after so long, and yeah, maybe get my groove back.
Yeah, cool, man. Hey, well, interesting show tonight. Now, look, we were talking that we were going to talk about, we teased talking about Three Waters tonight. We are going to talk about Three Waters, but I got to say from the outset, we did have the Taxpayers Union set up to come on. And I got a call at 6 o'clock tonight from Jordan Williams. I mean, I don't know the details, so I can't go into them, but long story short, bit of a family emergency, had to pull out last minute. He was very, very apologetic. So we are still going to talk about it. In fact, we've got a really interesting conversation coming up with Dr. Tim Chambers. Dr. Tim Chambers is with the Department of Public Health at Otago University in Wellington, and he sees Three Waters as a public health issue. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to go through what it means for you and where you are. So if you're watching us when we get to the Three Waters conversation, we're going to ask you in the chat to tell us where you are. And I mean, if there's 1 million people, because, 1 million people watch the show. If there's 1 million people, we won't be able to do everybody, but we'll go through some of them because there's a resource put out by the government saying what you are currently paying for your water rates, what you would be paying for them if they did nothing, and what you will be paying for them after the Three Waters has been taken over. And so we're going to just have a bit of a look at that and see what y'all think about it. Also, Chewy and I have talked before about the platform. from having a bit of experience with them, I see them as sort of, now we talked about them as a far right outlet. People get not offended, but a bit put off by that term, thinking neo-Nazi. What we're just saying is, there's a centrist political, you've got ACT on the center right, you've got ACT on the kind of far right, the further right. So I don't want to put the association out there that I'm saying everyone there is a neo-Nazi, but they're way right politically. And those of you who watch us will know we've had conversations around, criticisms that the platform has made of various academics. And we put out a thought that there was a bit of a dilemma for the platform, and it seems that they've made their decision in that dilemma. And we'll talk about that before the end of the hour as well. Let's get into the show with a big thank you to Simple, who does a super chat to us. Thank you, Simple. Great content all week. Keep up the good work. Appreciate that, Simple. Always appreciate your super chats. If you're more than welcome to throw them in there. We do always say, though, as well, if you want to do a super chat, you're more than welcome to. But, you can use it to ask a question or make a comment as well. Or you can just send platitudes, a little bouquet there like Simple did. We appreciate that as well. So thank you. We appreciate your super chat there. We are going to talk about COVID to start off the show. We've got a couple of things to talk about around it. And one is what's happening with the government and masks in schools, which if you've been following us for a while, something we've been banging on about for a long, long time. And the person we like to bang on about it with most of all is Dr. Anna Brooks, who's going to join us for a wee while. G'day, Anna.
G'day. How you doing?
Oh, yeah.
You doing all right?
Not bad.
So we're going to start this little chat by playing a bit of an interview or a conversation off 3 News. I think it's News Hub, off 3 News, just to get everyone up to date as to what the government has said, what they've changed, and what's going to happen in schools when that starts up again on Monday. So we'll just do this first, and then we'll have a bit of a chat about it, obviously wanting to get your input from it significantly. So here is the item from News Hub about the new instructions, shall we call them? I know we're avoiding the dirty M word. That's bad for the polls. But the new requests by the government, we'll just have a look what they've got to say.
There might not be a mask mandate, but that hasn't stopped Principal Wendy Coford opting to make one for her students and teachers.
They are strong mask wearers, and their parents are very supportive of us encouraging mask use indoors.
Wendy's mask measures now backed up by the government. The Ministry of Education is now strongly recommending schools have a mask policy for 4 weeks when Term 3 starts on Monday.
So that's the word, not mandate, strongly. And you got to put the only in there to make it give more impact. What's it? They're strongly recommending.
100%, yes, I would support a mandate, but strongly recommend is also very, very handy for all in our community.
This isn't a U-turn. We've always said that we encourage mask use in schools under Orange.
The Associate Education Minister has written to schools outlining the government's strong recommendation to enforce a mask-wearing policy as much as practical. Short of a legally enforceable mandate, this is about as strong as a recommendation comes.
Definitely the language is strong, but we need it to be strong at this point in time.
This is a very particularly challenging winter that we're facing, and so I encourage schools to take this seriously.
It's not just schools. To get through winter, public health officials are begging all Kiwis to wear masks indoors.
Wear a mask. But go. There you are, ready to go.
Begging Kiwis like National Leader Christopher Luxon, here with his whole bare face out in Te Puke, meeting, greeting, learning how logs get made.
A log comes in and wood goes out the other side.
The only mask in the whole video on his chin, posted to his social media accounts yesterday, the same day 32 deaths were linked to COVID.
Great morning we've had today.
And posted after Jacinda Ardern's photo furore on Tuesday, when the Prime Minister, also a Prime influencer, shared with her 1.7 million followers a picture of more than 100 maskless people crowded onto stairs in the Beehive. News Hub showed Luxon's video to aerosol expert Joel Rindelau.
Up close and personal. Yeah, that's the way to do it. I would definitely recommend putting on some N95s in that situation.
Christopher Luxon said in a statement national MPs are guided by their hosts on mask use, and masks were not required in the meetings.
Great opportunity for a leader to lead by example in these situations and be showing off that proper mask use.
Politicians have platforms and have influence, and National's been using our overwhelmed healthcare system to score political points. The very least our politicians of every stripe could do is help out healthcare workers by encouraging best mask practice, even if it's not technically required. Amelia Wade.
So we'll get into the Christopher Luxon side of things maybe in a wee while, Chewy. And the amazement from the man that you put logs into a machine and wood comes out the other end. Holy crap, whoever knew that? Anna, what do you think about what the government's now saying about masks in schools, and is it enough?
Yeah, well, as you sort of described there, there's never going to be the M word used here. So this is as strong as it can strongly get, as was emphasised there. So absolutely great that there's strong language coming through. Of course, mandates would be better at this point, but I think that's been loud and clear, since Orange hit, and there was never going to be mandates again. But I mean, it's going to be a problem still for any of the schools that don't like this ruling, because that's been the problem the whole time, is the inequities, right? It's great when a school embraces it and really rolls out and sets the standards. It's really tough when you're at a school that doesn't follow suit. So hopefully the strongly strong words are going to help some of those schools reinforce this, because we know that these subvariants out there at the moment are absolutely spreading, and we probably had a lull because of the school holidays, right? We know that schools are great for spreading, and in those indoor environments where if you're not masking, it's going to cause those waves to continue or potentially escalate. So it's a good move, but I think as the story said, it's probably as good as we can get in the context that we know the mandate big word is not going to be used again.
I'm interested, Anna, if you know of any research or data about young children passing on COVID. And I just had this thought the other day, because I was standing in a shop and obviously all the adults were masked in the shop and the, 8-year-old wasn't. And I'm not trying to be kind of the dick of the moment going, God, get your fucking mask on, kid. But I'm thinking a lot of people who I know have got COVID have got it through their primary school age kids. But we're also saying you don't need to mask your primary school age kids. Is there any data or do we know anything about like the infection rate and how much is coming through those younger children who aren't masked versus the rest of the population?
Well, I think, there was a phase where it was being downplayed that children don't pass on the virus, and that sort of phase passed. Because yes, there has been studies that are showing, okay, not current studies, but there've been studies through various waves in different countries where schools did facilitate the spread, and that usually comes through from studies where from schools that mask a lot then show that there's less infection. And I think that's even been anecdotally seen here in New Zealand. I think there's schools reporting, less absentees, less sick teachers, all the rest of it from really adherent schools. So yes, I completely understand it. It's really tough, enforcing these rules in small children. And probably through the school holidays, because they haven't been at school, they probably have been less of a risk out and about. But that kicks off next week, doesn't it? So schools are going back, and so I think children are just as likely to pass it on, and that's always been the strong thing, and that's why the strong message there is that the masking needs to be as enforced as it can be, because there's no the false sense of security of you're indoors and you can't spread it. I mean, we know that that's just not true, don't we? Yeah. And these subvariants are so spready.
Yeah, I mean, again, anecdotally, I use public transport quite a lot, and I have seen a lot of teenagers using the public transport, and the buses down here have halved the amount of journeys because the drivers are getting sick. And so now we've got full buses with most people masked, apart from the 6 teenagers down the back of the bus that don't need to, apparently because they're children. You got lungs. That should that should be the yardstick for public transport.
Yeah.
Do you have lungs? Here is a mask.
Absolutely. I mean, did you guys see Joel and the new RNZ story about the grubbiest places or the grossest air based on carbon dioxide emissions? Did you see that story?
No.
Oh no, I wouldn't be able to sleep.
It was maybe a week ago, but that was telling because buses were the grossest place to hang out.
Oh,
So
cool.
yeah, so standing room only buses, commuting, it was the most toxic place to be. And but there were some other surprising ones, like jumping in a taxi. If you jump in a taxi, put the window down because that driver's been breathing in there the whole time. So that's where I guess it's just one of those frustrating points in the pandemic where this virus is airborne. You're sharing air. So if there's not good ventilation, you're sharing air. And if there's virus in the air, you're at risk. So, steamy buses because you're all jammed in there, a taxi, a pub, just because you want to have a good time. The virus does too. The virus is hanging out with you,
I had a conversation with someone the other day, not to lower the tone here, because I know we're a very high class show, but when Chewy, you will attest to this, when a dog farts, it's like the worst thing in the world. In the last week, I've experienced twice my dog farting in my car with the windows up and the dog farting in my car with the windows down. And I kind of thought it's a really good example of aerosol, it's not a virus, but things in the air, how much more pernicious they are if you don't have airflow. Because the second time, someone else I was in the car with comment, "Oh, dog fart," and I actually didn't smell it at all. And we all know we're out there. But and look, I know that I'm being a bit flippant and a bit silly, but it actually was a really good example of how when there's airflow, these other things, these aerosol things, are far less likely to get into our system.
Yeah, absolutely.
You could use that example and write about it in some kind of educational blog or something if you wanted to. Hey, let me ask you one more question. It's a little bit, it's not off topic, but it's based on something we didn't really talk about yesterday, but we're going to talk about yesterday. And it's to do with an article from The Conversation that Professor, his name is just Professor Potter, isn't it? Professor John Potter wrote about each repeat illness raises the risk of long COVID. You're our long COVID guru. I wanted to ask questions about this. Do you know this article? Do you know what John Potter has written about?
I haven't read that particular one, but I know that the concept of reinfections increasing your risk, yes.
So that's the question, right? What I was trying to figure out last night and couldn't was when we say the more times you catch COVID, the more times you're at risk of long COVID, does that mean it's a 1% risk and every time you get it, there's a 1% risk so it increases? Or does that mean there's a 1% risk when you get it once, but that actually jumps to 3% when you get it twice? That actually jumps to 7%. So does the risk each time increase? Or are we just saying that the more times we get it, the more times there's a chance of long COVID, but the actual risk per illness doesn't raise?
Yeah, we don't know the specifics of that yet. But there are a lot of things at play here in that once you've been infected once, it depends how well your body copes with that. So you could have underlying inflammation and it depends how long your body takes to resolve that. And so that's why we're always banging on about, not getting reinfected because, you might, with no symptoms at all, so no long COVID symptoms, your body may take 6 months to get back to baseline. There's nothing that you feel or sense, but you just might not be back to your immune baseline. Then you get reinfected and your body's like, oh, crap, here we go again. And so it might take longer to resolve. And then you might get reinfected again. And it's like, hey, look, I'm done. I can't keep resolving this infection you keep throwing at me. And so that's kind of one story, as in where, or one theory, if you like, where it's just that you haven't fully recovered. So you're adding layer upon layer of insult to your immune system versus someone who may literally have some sort of predisposition where, you've kicked it off, as in you've got long COVID-y like symptoms
Yeah.
then you get reinfected, and you're boom, you know, like there's a point of no return because you've just had it again. So there was a big study just recently sort of showing that absolutely every time you get reinfected, your risk of long-term impacts increases. And that didn't just relate to long COVID. That meant all health problems got worse for you. So it could mean you could have a higher chance of dying.
Right. Wow.
It could mean that you have a higher chance of health problems from having had COVID. So it's essentially saying, don't get reinfected. And it kind of also applies to just keeping away from all of these respiratory illnesses, including flu, because, you know, we've heard a lot about the flu circulating, and, you know, many people are saying, oh God, that's way worse than COVID, you know, like as in people are getting really hit by it. But the same principles apply. You may have had COVID, it was a breeze, and then you get flu and it kicks your butt. You're still hammering your body, and maybe it can't cope once because this virus is doing some damage, right? Like, and it just might take time to resolve. So all of these things are so important. And, you know, as we keep banging on about as well, we're continually learning, and we won't really know the full term impacts of you know, reinfections or even one infection for years to come. So, you know, if you're unlucky and get infected, try and avoid it the next time. You're not bulletproof, but we absolutely have been seeing those behaviors. Like you hear people say, oh, thank God I've had it, I can go traveling. And you're like, what? You know? So, and you know, that was circulating, that sort of, that vibe, if you like, of I feel better now. Oh, my anxiety of thinking I might get infected's gone because I have, and I survived it, you know? So, yeah, I mean, and that's understandable because this sucks, right? It sucks being locked up or sort of being apprehensive about doing anything. But we're in the thick of winter. As we hear, you know, the summer countries are still getting hard hit, and you can escape it better, right? You can be outdoors and all the rest of it. So the strong message, and this comes back to the masking in schools next week, the strong message is we're heading into the thick of winter where we want to be inside and cozy. It's going to be thick with carbon dioxide. We're at our peak spready illness state. So now's the time to slap on a mask whenever you can indoors. You know, and be mindful of those times where it might be required to mask or recommended, and you still want to eat or drink. You're not safe from infection. Just, you know, weigh up your risk if that's really a good idea, wherever that might be. Probably taking off your mask to have a drink on a bus, not a good idea, right? We know that's the most filthy place you could be right now, is jam-packed on a commuter bus. So it's kind of like, you know, there's no circulation there. So yeah, you know, what more can we keep saying? You know, put on the mask. It's not forever. We hope it's not forever, but it's more about, it's normalizing it. Like, let's normalize winter's crap. Let's get through it. Let's stop spreading, you know, stop normalizing spreading infection and normalize stopping it.
For people who want to read it, I think David just messaged us, whose breath are you breathing, RNZ? We're not going to do that. If people want to go and freak themselves out and never go on a bus again, I guess they can go and have a look at that. Hey, Anna, thanks for joining us in 60 seconds. You've just been like the last official performance of a duty for Ashley Bloomfield. Any goss to tell us about the party hard academics and medical people that were at his last event?
There wasn't any goss. He didn't tell us where he's going on holiday for his, you know, once he heads off, his last day's next Friday. He said it's top secret where he's heading. It's to a Pacific island. That was the only, you know, so he didn't give us any goss. It was a great send off, and a sort of reflecting on his leadership role, his, you know, being proud of New Zealand and how everyone came together and all the rest of it. So it was a great send off, and he got a standing ovation, and from a well masked auditorium full of healthcare professionals. I was very pleased to see that, and so was he. He said, "Lovely to see so many mask wearing people in here, unlike, you know, what's happening outside." So yeah, so he commended the audience also for adhering to that too.
Well, welcome to the South Island. Thank you for giving us more time this morning, and we'll talk to you again real soon. It's been awesome.
This morning?
Oh, this afternoon. Oh, yeah. just gave away that we're not live, Chewy.
Oh no!
Oh no!
It's night time outside my window. I don't know where you guys are.
Yeah, no, same. We're live. We're live. Thanks, Anna.
Awesome. See you later.
Here's Anna.
This is how we prove we're live. We say thanks to Kim for sending through the super chat. Agree with Simple, says Kim. Great content this week. I regularly listen to RNZ, but DOC means I don't have to watch TV news. Thank you. DOC being the channel, the show being BHN. So DOC NZ Studios is the channel. So thank you, Kim. Appreciate that. Right, let's get into. Or actually, do you want to anything else you want to wrap up with there, Chewy, about that conversation?
I just want to say, I think Dr. Ashley, well, a couple of things. I think Dr. Ashley Bloomfield, he said he's going to Pacific Island. He's already on a Pacific Island. He's throwing everybody off the case. The man's playing 4D chess with everyone. He can just go home and nobody will expect him to be there. The second thing about that RNZ article that you just had up.
Yep.
If the country has to listen to anyone, it should be someone with a mullet like that.
Yeah, I was thinking that as well.
Mullet of authority. Like I feel like I would follow him into battle.
There we go. This is because that's in the TV.
Look at that.
It is,
Look at that man.
It's like a reincarnation of Murray Mexted, but 1,000 times better.
That's an authoritative mustache. He's doubling up. In a way, it's cruel. There be people that can't muster that sort of authority.
Let's get on with the second part of this conversation. And for those of you who watch, you know that I went pretty hard on the Prime Minister during the week about taking that photo with no mask on. So I think it's completely appropriate and fair for me to say what the actual fuck is going on here.
It's incredible IT support to businesses here.
I guess we'll just put this. Oh, really we want to hear that line, don't we, about the wood?
They had a great morning tea with incredible people who volunteer time in different community organisations, meeting the
close
in the Te region. And it was amazing just to hear their work and just their passion for the people and the communities that they serve. And then I went on to Porcupine, which is a fantastic sawmilling operation here. And just seeing it from beginning to end, a log comes in and wood goes out the other side and everything in between, and how they've...
Oh, bless him. Now,
log goes in.
Now, I actually think one of the points made on that TV3 article was really, really, really valid, which went, the opposition are currently giving the government shit over things like masks and COVID numbers and our response, yet they're also actively not participating in solving the problem. I think that's really fair. Now, in the article, which did I keep it? Oh, I did keep it. I'm pretty sure he says the reason he wasn't wearing a mask, I wonder if I can find it exactly. Think amongst yourselves. There we go. Luxon said in a statement on Friday that national MPs are guided by their hosts on mask use, and masks were not required in meetings. So he's saying he's guided by their hosts. So in other words, you turn up to an occasion, and if the host says, no masks, you go, no mask. Now, the right wing, especially the right wing in America, what they would call that is a cuck or a snowflake. Because what basically that is someone with no spine who goes, oh, yeah, I'll do what you want. That's fine. You know, when we were teenagers, your mother would say to you, if your friend jumped off a cliff, would you jump off too? Guided by your hosts is a weak, spineless thing to do, as opposed to doing what's best for I mean, they could be his voters that are in there, either he's getting sick or that are getting him sick. So I think it's fair that we actually be as direct about this to do with the national leader as we were about Jacinda as the Labour leader and Prime Minister, because we were pretty disappointed in that performance as well. But I'll be really clear. When you get these big tough politicians that want to be firm and tough and, you know, let's stop all this woke bullshit, and they go, well, it's guided by the host. What was I supposed to do? It's completely a cuck move, and it's a definition of it. Which I think this is the thing, right? I think these words are ridiculous and slightly repulsive, but when it's this group of people that use those kinds of terms, when they do what they accuse others of doing, then they got to own the word themselves. Might be a bit harsh, but there you go, Chewy.
Yeah, I mean, in that whole video, there's not a single person with a mask on that I saw, and there's a couple of photos from the event as well. He's within an arm's length of people. Nobody's wearing a mask. He's got one. It's around his fucking chin.
Yeah, he's wearing his chin diaper, as South Park calls it. He's wearing his chin diaper.
Yeah, exactly. Your chin is not connected to your lungs. That's where the air goes. That's why you've got to cover your disgusting COVID holes. That shouldn't be hard. And if you're the leader of the opposition and you walk in, you go, "Oh, nobody else is wearing a mask." Have some spine and know that you should be wearing a mask.
And look, here's the actual counterpoint to what he was saying. And Chewy came up with this right before we came on here, and I thought it's perfect. If Mr. Luxon is guided by the people in the meeting, then what the fuck is this? When he was in Singapore, he didn't seem to want to be guided by the people in the meeting then, being the only person not wearing a mask. He didn't wear a mask anyway, so it's all horse shit. But I guess what we can see now, exactly why Christopher Luxon and Nicola Willis gave the Prime Minister such an easy ride on her not wearing the mask, because they can't be fucked. Well, he can't be fucked. I can't speak to Nicola because she said, yep, fair enough. She admitted to doing it sometimes and not others, and there you go. So he says that he wasn't wearing it because he was guided by the hosts, yet in a very recent photo where all the hosts had them on, he didn't. So you can't have it both ways.
I found the Singapore photo especially just incredibly disrespectful. Like, it is literally reading the room that you're in. You know, are you saying he got to Singapore without having a mask on?
Yeah.
You know, you've got, where is his advisor? Where is someone that runs after him with a sippy cup and says, "Hey, look, you should put a mask on, buddy. Everybody else is wearing a mask. You should wear a mask."
Well, here's the other thing. I like the word that you used, like disrespectful, because actually, if this is kind of respect and empathy, right? And valuing other people. If you are in a room where everyone's wearing a mask and they say to you, because they're incredibly polite, "Oh, you can do what you want." And you go, "Oh, okay, I won't wear a mask then." That's an asshole move. Like, it really is. That's an asshole move. And that's yeah. I don't know. I'm into that.
I'll tell you just an interaction I had with someone the other day. They came up to me. I said, "Hey, did you need a mask?" Obviously wearing mine. And the person went, "Oh, I do have an exemption, but I will wear it because I believe when I'm interacting with someone, I should." Awesome. Okay. I was like, "Thank you so much," because I hate asking. But that's the way they do it. Is he a dumbass?
Yeah.
I mean, surely in year 2 of the pandemic, you know that it's in the air and you're in a group of people. Wear a mask wherever you can. It just seems really dumb.
All righty. Hey, we're going to move on. We want to talk a little bit about, if those of you who've been with us for a while, you'll know that we've had some interactions with, maybe not necessarily with, but around and directed towards the platform, what I think is an alt-right broadcast group. We had an interaction with them 3 or 4 weeks ago, and it was based around the treatment of an academic that went on with Sean Plunkett. And the academic had written a piece that talks about Luxon's dilemma, and was talking about, Luxon has a dilemma that he's pro-life. I'm paraphrasing. He's pro-life, yet, and he considers it to be murder, yet he has to take a public position of not wanting to do anything about all these murders happening. I've paraphrased that badly, but that was basically it. And the interview that was done was repugnant. It was disgusting. It was the worst kind of broadcasting. And if for people who want to challenge that, there weren't any broadcasters that I saw, and obviously, connected to a lot of them through Facebook and through, that actually went, "No, that was appropriate." Like, without question, they all went, no, too far, including a bunch of very right-wing commentators from the New Zealand Herald saying, "Yeah, it wasn't the platform's finest moment." So what we did when we talked about that was we actually identified that the platform had a bit of a dilemma. The platform seems to be a place where they have a huge number of alt-right, anti-vaxxer, anti-science followers. And that gets seen, right, when someone like Michael Laws will, and this happened, right, has called anti-vaxxers lunatics and nutters. You look at the Facebook feeds after that, and they're basically saying, "Well, I'm leaving the platform now." You see people saying things like, "I can't believe you take your hourly news feed from Newstalk ZB. They're mainstream media. We're leaving now." Like, this is a common refrain to the people who listen to and interact with the platform. So that's actually not, I believe, who Michael Laws is or who Sean Plunkett is. And as I say in this clip that I'm going to play from when we last talked about it, me and Chewy there, when you're saying that Sean Plunkett and Michael Laws are the same ones, yeah, you're in an interesting place. So have a listen to a little bit of commentary that we put out there about Plunkett's dilemma. Now, I'm not going to talk about Plunkett's dilemma because the response doesn't necessarily involve Plunkett, but Sean Plunkett's platform is the platform. So it's really the platform's dilemma and what they're going to do. Have a listen to what we said a couple of weeks ago. Because I don't actually believe that Sean Plunkett and Michael Laws are as far right as these people that he is attracting. No. Now, that says something in of itself as to how far right these people are. If Sean Plunkett and Michael Laws are seen as the sane ones, right? So this is Plunkett's dilemma. If that's the group of people he is attracting, when mummy and daddy's business money runs out and he needs to run off a platform and only off a platform, he's got two choices. One is he moves his opinion to that far right position to keep his audience, or he loses his audience and continues, I guess, or takes the position that where he maybe really sits politically speaking, which for him personally might be a normal right voter. So you know what that is? That's Plunkett's dilemma.
Yeah.
Luxon's dilemma is about abortion. Plunkett's dilemma is about how do I monetize these far right nutters that I disagree with, but for some reason the content I'm making is quite attractive to them.
Yeah.
That's his dilemma. So you get the point. That's clear enough, Chewy?
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
Basically a grifter is called someone who will look to make money off a group of people. If anyone here saw my interview this morning with Professor Dave on the podcast channel, we talked about grifters, all those flat earthers who basically don't believe the earth is flat, but they're grifting a bunch of stupider people to get money out of them by being disingenuous with it. So I just noticed, and this is why I'm bringing it up this week on the platform, right? Remember, I put a theory out there at some stage. There's going to be a dilemma for the platform. They're either going to have to move further to the right and give more space, more time, more air to it, or they're going to have to actually stick by their guns and stay where they are and probably lose that audience, right? Like I said, lots of complaints by people, even over them taking a news feed from News Talk ZB. It seems that they've made their choice. Now, Sean Plunkett was away this week. He had a heart attack last week. He's publicly said that, so I can say that. And the week before that, his brother committed suicide again. He's publicly said that. And so I'm going to say it's okay. It's horrible.
Oh, that's rough.
Yeah, it's
that
horrible.
Real rough. I like, honestly, not taking the piss. That is rough.
He's had a rough couple of weeks. So this is not, I'm not jumping on him here, right? And he wasn't involved in this content. But as again, the platform is Sean Plunkett's platform. And it seems that the platform has made their decision, because in this week you've had multiple loud anti-vax voices on, prominent anti-vax voices on, being given space and time and welcomed on board. This is 54 minutes, this conversation with Dr. Matthew Shelton. Dr. Matthew Shelton is one of the guys who started up NZDSOS, who are the group of anti-vaxxer doctors. I'm not going to play you any of this, but I can tell you within the first couple of minutes, this doctor basically goes, nah, they told us the vaccines are going to work. And look, people are catching COVID. It's as stupid as that when we know that the vaccine was designed for the first iteration of COVID, and it was 95% effective against that. And now it's less effective because it's a different iteration, just like the flu thing each year. But so they gave him an hour. And this is the thing that shocked me a little bit. Right. I mean, like, I'm just being blunt with you. I mean, it's our 100th anniversary or 100th show on Monday, and we're going to talk to you a bit about our numbers and that kind of thing. I dream to have the platform's numbers. So it's like, they're bigger than us. They're doing more with us, but their audience they can fucking keep. I'll put it that way. 1,800 comments on this and 4,500 shares. 4,500 shares of this. Now, if you compare that to a normal platform conversation, oh, look, that's got no shares. Well, let's go to a different one. 8 shares, 45 shares, 189 shares. That's great. 189 would be amazing. 15 shares, and it goes on. Yeah. 5 shares, 4,500 shares. So that says to me, I would take that at least as some kind of evidence for the audience that they have wants that content, likes that content, and is sharing that content. And obviously, though, that share won't just be the platform audience. It'll be the platform audience and ones that got it. Later on this week, same week, 40 minutes, I think this was, 40 minutes given to the Qantas captain Graham Hood on ending his career over 5 decades in the face of mandates and pushing back against COVID government overreach in Australia. So, I mean, it's a couple of things. You might say I'm reading too much into it, but I would read into it. It seems to me they've made their decision. They haven't got the dilemma anymore of how do they monetize that far right perspective. They're just going to provide them information. Shall we?
Yeah, absolutely. When we were looking at those numbers that shared and liked those 2 particular videos, just basically as we've been talking, I've been going through some of them. It's certainly not an organic sort of reach. That's not the numbers that they would usually pull in, as you've seen. And I've just picked out a selection of how many tabs have we got open here? 15, 20 tabs of different people's Facebook profiles. And they have very suspicious friend counts. They're from all over the world. Their feeds are just pro-Trump and anti-COVID, just nonsense. It's so suspicious. It's so very suspicious.
So are you suggesting, I mean, like that, what that would mean is that, I mean, like I've done this before for myself. When you boost something on Facebook, there's no problems with that, but they probably boosted it through America and put in keywords like Trump and Republican and to get the numbers up, probably.
I don't know if, look, I would go as far as saying that they're almost bot accounts.
You reckon?
Or compromised accounts, certainly. I don't think I'm not accusing the platform of specifically doing it, but I'm thinking of these botnets, these misinformation networks that have all of these fake accounts and stuff like that, and they just grab any piece of misinformation that they want. Cool platform outside of New Zealand, don't know how small it is, don't know how legitimate it is, but it looks reasonably good. Boof. The stories about the Qantas captain, there's a lot of Australian shares on that. I would understand that, but there's also a lot from Mumbai and Botswana and Ireland, Southampton, just really, really weird reach.
But I mean, even if it was half of those people, or 75%, that still would be 1,000. If it was 75%, that would still be 1,000 shares.
Yeah,
that's still pretty. I'm not saying impressive. I'm jealous of the numbers. I'm just saying it demonstrates to me who the audience is. And look, someone's just said in the comments, why do we care so much? Fair enough. Never heard the platform, nor do I care. Why do you care so much, BHN? And the answer is because, as we always try and do, we try and lead horses to water. And what we're trying to do is put out factual information, and we're trying to dispute disinformation. And when it's like if we've done things on counterspin media. Because we want to say this is actually a concern, and this could be at its nth degree a dangerous thing for the country, like at its nth degree. Maybe it's not now because it's small and no one listens to it. Like, I mean, if no one listens to them, that means no one listens to us. But I don't think it's wrong highlighting it. And also, what you got to understand if you're going to be watching us is we commentate on the commentators. It's something we do. It's something we're always going to do. Some people don't like that. We've been accused of being a, what do you call it when you do a reflection on something else? You look at something, you review something.
Reaction videos.
Reaction page. I'm like, well, on some levels we are. We react to how the news is told. So in an ideal world, we will talk about the news issue of the day. And if it's been done in a particular way by, let's say, an AM show or a platform or a News Talk ZB or an RNZ, we'll also talk about how they've done it. And so what this is us talking about this disinformation that's been put out, and we're saying about how the platform has done it. So it's us commentating on the commentators as much as anything else.
It's real important to understand how these things disseminate out. Like we're certainly a couple of people that are pretty politically plugged in and watching the media and that sort of thing. But you know what? Your nan or your uncle, not probably deep critical thinkers when it comes to media. And if they see a slick video come along, or they see a nice, infographic on Facebook, they'll share it. And if we don't know where those shares are coming from, as we head into an election in the middle of a global pandemic, that's really worrying.
Yeah.
I think people should understand that, be able to push back against it. I mean,
well,
I don't think there'll be anyone in the chat that doesn't have a relative that's really drunk some suspicious Kool-Aid over the past year and a half. I know I'd certainly have a few friends gone down that rabbit hole. Hell, one of them's an organizer for Nurses for Freedom.
Wow.
That's embarrassing.
Wow. And look, we're about to do it again. We're about to commentate on the commentators because we're about to talk about Three Waters. And whilst we had Jordan Williams from the Taxpayers Union due to come on, he had to cancel last minute because of a family issue going on. Completely genuine, like no one's tried to get out of anything or anything. It's like for real and fair enough. And we're about to talk about what they have been saying. It's actually on some level no different. We've talked about what the platform has been saying. We're about to talk about what Taxpayers Union and the Stop Three Waters have been saying. So that's what we do. So the answer to your question is why we're talking about it, because that's what we do. It's like, what is the Edmund Hillary quote? Why did you climb the mountain? Because it was there. Like, well, why are we talking about it? Because it's in the media landscape. It's a news issue, and that's what we do. Simple.
Yep.
So let's get into this, shall we? What I'd like you guys to do, if you want to participate, if you haven't done this yet, is tell us where you are in the country. If you're in New Zealand, we have 67 councils in the country. Someone's going to tell me somewhere that I don't actually know, and that's going to be embarrassing. So the councils are divided up into 67. There's 67 councils in New Zealand, right? If you tell me what council you're in, then we'll have a look at what your numbers are in case you haven't done it for yourself yet. Right. At the end of this little segment, we're then going to go to an interview that I did earlier this afternoon with Dr. Tim Chambers from the Public Health Department at Otago University. And in that, he's talking about why Three Waters is necessary as a public health situation. All right. So what we do is we thought we'd have a bit of a look at it. And I think probably where we'll start actually is let's start with Stop Three Waters, which is the Unite Union. What is it? Not the Unite Union, sorry. The
I was gonna say what?
No, sorry. My brain just went up.
Taxpayers Union?
I was thinking about Unite the Right for some reason. I don't know why that popped into my head. The Taxpayers Union.
Actually, point of order, the Taxpayers Onion, because they aren't a union.
Okay. Very good. So we were going to have Jordan on, and I'm sure he'll come back on when he has an opportunity to do that. So we have to just go by their website. This is their website, Stop Three Waters. Obviously, there can be no pushback from them or from us. So we're just going to have a look at some of the main claims they make and then have a look if they stack up for what we're seeing around the place about. Now, actively, happily say not experts in this, right? But these are the main concerns that would appear according to their website as to why we shouldn't support the Three Waters legislation. Okay. The first one is higher water costs. Well, we're going to get to that shortly because that's why I want to know where you are in the country. I won't get a chance to everyone, but we'll pull a few of them out. And the reason I'm doing that is to actually show that I'm not just gerrymandering or picking something out to go, well, here's a good one to put our perspective forward. Like I'll pick 2 or 3 out of the ones that you guys have actually said. In fact, if you want to jot some down, Chewy, because I'm looking the other way, it's some of the regions, and I'll try and find them when we're done it. So the first concern by the guys at Stop Three Waters is higher water costs. The government claims larger water entities will be more efficient, but the government's own peer review rubbishes the claimed savings, which don't even consider the financial implications of co-governance. So that bit there is nothing to do with financial. I mean, they don't even consider co-governance. It's like a throwaway comment to make it look like co-governance is going to add a dollar figure to it. There's no evidence of that, but they wanted to put co-governance in there as the evil because that seems.
And we know why. That's a dog whistle.
Yeah. There's no limit on how much the unelected entities can charge for water services. No stopping iwi groups charging water royalties, nor is there a requirement for councils to reduce rates to reflect the fact that they will no longer supply water services. So, apart from anything else right now, if you think about your council running the water, at the moment, according to your council, there is no limit on how much your elected entities can charge for water services. So there's no thing, and none of the other things that they're concerns about to do with the unelected bodies, as they say it, unelected by the people. They are kind of elected from within the group. They're nominated. Seem to be able to be applicable to possibly either the current situation or the proposed new situation. They also talk about unnecessary bureaucracy. Now, I wrote something down here. I'm probably really wrong with this, but one of the big issues that they seem to have is under the new proposal reforms, there will be 4 layers of bureaucracy separating ratepayers from the new water entities. I want to think about this logically. How many layers of bureaucracy, which just is a buzzword for, you know, for these people to say bad government, but 4 layers to get to. So right now, as a ratepayer, Chewy, how many layers would there be? And I'm asking this question, I've done some writing, but I'm not sure, between, say, you as the ratepayer and getting to someone to make the decision to fix the issue of pipes in your streets. Because I would think it would go from you probably to a worker, from the worker probably to the manager, you know, of the department, and from there probably to some kind of entity within council that has to approve the funding or something. And I'm not saying it's the same size bureaucracy, but I suspect there are already multiple layers right now
absolutely.
to go from the ratepayer through to getting some kind of solution for your local 3 waters.
Yep. Customer service would be the first. So however you contact them, through Facebook or phone call or go into the office, then that gets kicked up the chain to someone who sends it out to operations that ends up being fixed. So, like, you know, you're easily talking about 3 or 4 there anyway.
So, I mean, as I said, the 3 or 4 layers might here in Dunedin be at the Octagon in that same building. I'm not saying it's not going to be a bigger layer or whatever, but it's not like, yeah, the ratepayer in Dunedin has a problem with their pipes and it gets solved by the first person from the council they see on the street. You know, there is still that idea of having to go through layers and be approved, and the way they want to word it, bureaucracy. No local controls. Well, the government claims, so what they say when they say this, well, the government claims what they're going is, nah, not true, don't believe you, because the government is saying councils will still own water assets. Council will lose the rights of control. Decisions around selling assets, receiving dividends, and setting charges, will be made by unelected entities with no provision for councils to withdraw from the new regime. Well, I mean, it sounds like we're saying that perhaps we should actually sell off maybe the taxpayers union would be happy with us selling off the assets.
Oh, they absolutely fucking would. They probably know some people that want to buy them.
And the final one is undemocratic. Labour did not campaign on these reforms. You know how when sometimes a problem puts itself in front of you? Apparently, if you haven't told everybody that you're going to do it before you knew about it, you should do nothing about it.
They didn't campaign on a COVID response either.
No, I know. Gosh. And this one down the bottom. Now, we're going to look at a couple of things. Even though most councils oppose the plan, right, remember that, Minister says she has the right to simply force new regimes on local councils, whether they like it or not. You know, like paying GST. Fucking assholes. They just force that on it, whether we like it or not. Okay. I want to look at a couple of specific things here. One is the majority, right? Most councils means the majority. There's a group called Communities for Local Democracy. They're an anti-3 waters group. At the moment, they have 31 councils, right, who are apparently against 3 waters. Now, it's not the majority. There's 67 councils. It's 31. But I suspect when you look at this, and you have a look at the dates of the things they put in here, September last year, October, September, October, that this has been up for 10 months. And certainly 10 months ago, I've seen articles from this year where this group had 20 councils on board and 15 councils on board. So right now they have 31 councils on board. So if I had Jordan here, I had someone from the Taxpayers Union here, I would like to know where this number came from. Most councils oppose the plan. I see no evidence for that. That may or may not be true, but as you guys know, when I say this, I want to see the metric. How do we know that? The other thing is councillors and councils may oppose it because they know who's going to vote.
Yeah.
Predominantly older, whiter, wealthier people. So maybe the region would want it, but the people who are going to vote in the local body election don't. So just saying the council doesn't want it doesn't necessarily mean it's good or bad for that area. And I'll give you an example of that. I'm talking heaps to you. You jump in there. You have a chat.
Yeah. Oh, I was just going to say, you mentioned that list. You're talking landlords as well, property owners. I think here locally, South Dunedin has big issues with their pipes and sea level change and that sort of thing. The people that own those properties in South Dunedin aren't going to give a shit for the most part, because it's just the tenants that have to deal with it. So yeah, I think you're right. Ratepayers, organisations, and that sort of thing always skew older and more wealthy, and that's dangerous. They're so concerned about democracy. Why aren't they concerned about that? It's not representative.
So when we hear about the majority of councils being against it, and then we see this group here who are saying that we're 31 councils strong. Now, if we went and talked to the actual people, right? The actual ratepayers, the voters. And here's an example. There's a lot of stick coming out of the Gore area for a lot of people being unhappy about signing up to Three Waters, right? The mayor of Gore says very clearly, though, his district needs to spend more than $300 million on Three Waters infrastructure in the next decade or so. That's a cost of $50,000 per ratepayer. So if you actually said to the same people, okay, you're against it, that means you're happy to pay $5,000 per ratepayer every year on top of what you're already paying for the next 10 years. Because if you're all okay with that, then we can do it. But I suspect if you put that in front of some people, the ones who are against it, they also wouldn't be that happy with this. This is actually a solution to that. And I think that you may be getting councillors and mayors who are anti it, but I'd be really interested to see informed ratepayers, what they've got to say about it as well. The other claim that was made, which we're now going to delve into a bit more, was it will cost more. Now, you could argue, and I'm not going to challenge you on this, that you don't believe the government. Nuh-uh, don't believe you. But do we have any councils to check in on there, Chewy? Did you note any down?
First up,
okay.
Pukekohe.
Oh, so that's going to be Auckland Council.
Young Mr. David.
Waikato, Auckland Council. So at the moment, current average household water costs for Auckland, 1,060. Average household costs without the reform by 2051 will be 1,910. Average household water costs with the reform by 2051, $800. So actually, Pukekohe, according to these numbers, according to the government numbers, and you're welcome to challenge them, that's up to you, I'm not going to do that, says by 2051 you'll be paying less for your water if Three Waters goes through than not. Now, the taxpayers unions say you'll be paying more for your water. Give me your metric. Show me your evidence. Show me what it is. I'm not saying this is 100% right. I'm saying these are the numbers that I have in front of me. Seems that in Puki, you're going to make a 20% savings, according to their numbers. What else have we got, Chewy?
Let's try the Northern Palmerston.
Oh, Northern Palmerston. What's that one? Manawatu District. Palmerston North City Centre. Average current costs are average household cost is $490. If they do no reform by 2051, the average cost will be $32.10.
Jesus Christ.
And with the reform, it's going to be $12.60. So that's an area where the price is going to go up by $800 a year, but it's still going to be, according to their numbers, $2,000 a year cheaper than if they don't do the reform. Which would you prefer? I get it that there'll be a good headline, the mayor of Palmerston North, and I don't know if they're one of the areas that are signed up going, oh, if we let the Three Waters go through, your water rates are going to triple. But they may leave out the idea that if they don't, they're going to go up sixfold. So, got another council?
Yeah, let's take one that's been quite strong against it, and a place that I am from, Timaru.
Okay, let's have a look at Timaru, which will be down here. What's that? Waitaki, Wamati, Timaru. Yeah. So current $1,000. If they don't do the work by 2051, it'll be $5,000. If they do the work by 2051, it'll be $1,600. So you're going to go up by 60%, but you would go up by, is that 500%? 5 times if you don't get it done. So yes, more expensive than now, but far less expensive than if they don't do the reform. Should we do one more? Do you want to pick one out?
Yeah, pick Southland.
Okay,
that'd be an interesting one.
Okay, Southland District. Current 1,400. If they don't do the reforms, nearly 9,000, 8,500. If they do the reform, 1,600. So what's that? 10%, 10% more. But that's also, remember, that says by 2051, 10% more by 2051. So that means you'll go up 10% over the next 30 years.
Yeah.
So, you know, we got to do Dunedin though, because it's where we are. Dunedin's about the same. Oh, it goes up by 60%, but it's down by from 5,100 to 1,600. So look, all I'm saying, without being a mouthpiece or a voice piece for Labour, because I don't know the final details, is actually these are the numbers they're putting out. Some lobby groups are saying, well, it's going to be more expensive, and I'm saying, well, this is what they're saying. All you're doing is putting out a little line like this that says higher water costs, ! Like it's an emergency.
Yeah.
To me, that's I personally find that less convincing than being able to go through and see the numbers that have been worked out and looked at.
Yeah.
But
not all councils are the same as well, but there is a common thread for a lot of them, is that there has been a massive underinvestment. And if we're looking at a lot of the factors that we'll be dealing with in 10, 20, 30 years, water infrastructure is going to be really fucking important.
Yeah.
So I'd hate for it to be kicked down the can kicked down the line even further than it has been over the last 30 years.
I imagine what you find, like I've just been clicking around South Taranaki, for example, currently paying about $2,000 a year. They'll go down to 1,200 a year. I suspect that probably means that this is a region where maybe the pipes are doing quite well. Maybe they've already got good infrastructure, hence the price being less. Possibly the places that are, what is Clutha? Because we just talked about Clutha. That's Clutha. Oh, that's Gore. We talked about Gore. So see, Gore's going to be 1,300 at the moment, go to 1,600. But that means they're also going to have their $300 million investment done. So rather than $5,000 a year, by 2051, it's going to go up by $300 a year. And like we said last night, did I say it last night? The last couple of nights, if you've got assets worth, $100 million, but you've got debt, or you've got jobs to do, work to do on those worth $300 million, they're not an asset. They're a liability. So, sorry, I didn't realize I wasn't on screen. There's Gore there. I think that's Gore. Is that Gore? That's Gore, yeah. 1,300 to 1,600. So, yeah. So it's interesting. I'm about to get into a bit of an interview now as well, Chewy, with an academic about Three Waters being a health issue. Do you want to cover off anything else? Oh, the other thing I was going to say, and I said I talked to a lot of people about. I talked to the Naya Mahuta's office to try and get someone on. I talked to Kieran McCulty's office. I talked to the Taxpayers Union. I talked to those people who do the democracy for everyone. A lot of people. So we gave it a good push, and we had some people lined up who could come on, and it just kind of all fell over. So someone wants the link for the website on the.
Yeah, I was just going to say that.
I'll be honest with you. I just Googled Three Waters, and it comes up. It is just literally threewaters.govt.nz. That's literally at threewaters.govt.nz. So I may put, if I remember, I might put that into the equation. But yeah, that's what it is. Threewaters.g. I just Googled Three Waters, and it's one of the top 2 or 3 finishes. And you just click over to one of the tabs up the top, and it's all there. Something else I said whilst talking around people is it really seems so interesting that so often we find there are lots and lots and lots. Like it was very easy to locate people who were anti Three Waters, be they Groundswell or the Unite Union or Stop Three Waters or the mayors who aren't, all those people. And it's a lot more difficult to find pro people. It's like, it seems that what happens within society is it's really easy to get together a lobby group to say no, but you don't typically get together many lobby groups that say, yeah. You get people or individuals or academics or the actual ones who are doing this saying yeah. But other than like when we had the cannabis referendum and there was the saying nope to dope, and then there was the counterpoint as well of that, it seems to be a strange anomaly that if you want to bitch and moan, all of a sudden a lobby group springs up. But if you want to actually support something, you're sort of left alone. I noticed that. I thought about that today for the first time when looking around as to who the people to come on could have been to talk. All right. Is there anything else you want to mention on that, Chewy, before we fire off this conversation?
No. I think that one thing I would say for anybody who hasn't watched it, White Man on a Desk has an excellent informative piece on Three Waters that I found pretty enlightening. I would recommend that. Yeah.
And Robbie basically goes, like there's a point where there was a Scottish group that came and did some research for New Zealand on what we could do, and the government at that point had never released that information. So Robbie's a bit like, well, we probably want to see what they've said. But his conclusion is basically something has to happen. And actually, this is about what we're going to talk about now with a public health specialist. And councils can't do it by themselves. That's kind of where we're at. Something has to happen, and the councils don't have the resources to do it. So what's the other alternative? And that's sort of, I guess, without paraphrasing Robbie too much, where he gets to, isn't it? He kind of goes, yeah, it's the best thing we've got going at the moment. Because if you look at places like Havelock North, where people died because of poisoning in their pipes, that's what started this whole thing off. Something has to be done. And if it means that some places who have good infrastructure have to carry some of the places that have bad infrastructure, so be it.
I mean, I was in Wellington.
That's called being a country.
Yeah. I was in Wellington a couple of weeks ago, and we were walking along the waterfront, and it just smelled like shit. And I asked my mate that works there, I was like, well, what the fuck is that? And he goes, oh, it's because it's raining, bro.
Yeah.
That's not good. That's not good.
All right, let's fire this off. Are you going to hang around in the chat there, Chewy?
Yep. Chat might need a firefighter.
Yeah. All right. So so let's play this. And this is, as I said, a public health conversation around Three Waters with Dr. Tim Chambers. And we'll see you in about, I think it's about 12 minutes, something like that. Enjoy. From the Department of Public Health, University of Otago, Wellington based, which is always a bit of a negative, seeing you should always be based in Dunedin if you're a University of Otago. Dr. Tim Chambers. G'day, Tim. Thanks for joining us, man.
Kia ora, Pat.
I have been learning, talking to you just before we started, about what this thing is, because in this day and age we have blogs and we have articles and we have posts, and this is technically classified as a scholarly blog. And it's not a peer-reviewed piece of research, but it is kind of a snapshot of research. How would you describe what a scholarly blog is versus, like official peer-reviewed research?
Yeah, it's mainly just it got all the references that you'd need to talk about a critical piece of sort of legislation like this or any type of public health issue. Except it doesn't go through the usual long peer review process, which can take sort of 6 or 12 months. So they're really good for sort of quick policy analyses like this, but make sure that they've got all the credible references to back up the statements in the piece.
Yeah, and whilst we're not going to get into all the references, I mean, if people, I'll put the link up, if people have a look, there's a dozen, 15, 18, you have 21 references just for this blog as to stuff that you've talked about in the blog. So, if people want to spend a deep dive and go a bit deeper into what you've said, they can come to the blog, they can see all the citations, they can find out for themselves. Now, the blog is written, Three Waters reforms are needed to protect public health and ensure changes are economically sustainable and efficient. And whilst you've talked about the need for them to be economically sustainable, we're primarily talking tonight about the public health part of what Three Waters is and what it provides. You've written in this article that the key approach to water services is far from adequate to protect public health, and you've written individual councils cannot typically support the necessary upgrades in their water services without major rates hikes. Let's start with the protecting public health. Can you expand that on that for us? Because obviously, as those of us, the great unwashed out here, getting information from all sorts of different sources, we're hearing perspectives from multiple sides saying that Three Waters is essential. It either seems to be Three Waters is essential and has to happen, or Three Waters comes straight from the pit of hell. That seems to be about the aspect of discourse right now. So it's really good to have a look at it from, even if we remove some of the economic issues and go from the public health issues, why do we need Three Waters?
Yeah, exactly. And it is a very complicated area. And I think that was the main sort of motive for us to write this piece, was that we felt that the public health aspect of the full Three Waters reforms was being lost.
Yeah.
And so some of the listeners might be aware, but the Three Waters reforms was a result of the Havelock North Campylobacter outbreak, which made most of the town sick and killed 4 people.
Yes, terrible.
And so after that, there was a government inquiry which showed that, really the issues that led to that weren't specific to Havelock North, but were actually systemic of the entire drinking water regulation that we have here in New Zealand. So what happened from there is really the Three Waters came from that. But I think what has been lost is that, look, there are these sort of big events like Havelock North, but we know that there's an estimated 34,000 people that get sick from bacterial contamination. So that's quite a huge burden of sort of bacterial related disease. And that's just an estimate. I mean, a lot of people that get sick don't go to hospital. So it's really hard to get accurate numbers on that. But, you know, if you have a funny tummy, you might think that it's just from what you ate last night, but it could well be from your water. And you might have no problems with your water throughout the year, but you might have an extreme rainfall event like we've just been having over the last week. Treatment plants can't cope. They get contaminated. People get sick. So, you know, in Te Mata Arawai is the new drinking water regulator that's come from these Three Waters reforms. They actually just issued their first report, their annual report on drinking water quality last week. And they found that in the first 6 weeks of their running, they had 82 breaches of the drinking water standards and 27 boil water notices, which means that you have to boil the water to kill all the bacteria before you're allowed to drink it. And so that was just in 6 weeks.
Wow.
And for us, and in the work that we're really doing a lot of research in, is these sort of chemical or nutrient-based contaminants, which we don't really know much about because your listeners probably not aware, but the way in which we monitor different contaminants in New Zealand is largely based off a monitoring program we did in 1996 to 2004.
Okay.
If you tested under half the limit through those years, you're no longer required to test for that contaminant. So to give you an example, if you tested under half the limit for something like nitrate, which is the most common drinking water contaminant in New Zealand in 1996, you didn't have to then test for it ever again.
The system that's being set up, and that sounds terrifying because obviously the day after that it's at 48%, it might be at 60%. So it's crazy to think that those regulations are written in that way, though. I'm also wondering as to why you had a headline in your article that says the current system is not adequate to protect public health or promote health equity. I'm not that we're necessarily talking about the economics of it in great detail, but I guess what you're saying, what's being said by most people is the current system is broken. Why does the current system not work to promote public health or promote health equity? Like it could be working. I'm sure when it was designed and developed, it worked, perhaps. I don't know, actually. So why is it not working now, and why the need for even forget Three Waters, but to change anything?
Yeah, well, I think we've taken this type of risk-based approach, which I just touched on before, where, you know, if you test for it once and it's not there, then no need to do it anymore. That's slowly been fixed by Te Mata Arawai with their new rules and regulations, but there's still a lot of research gaps in that space. I think mainly what it comes down to actually is an economic problem, in that councils do not have sufficient funds to run a professional water program. And we're seeing that, I mean, it's really difficult for some of those smaller councils that have very small ratepayer population to pull from. They can't afford to have groundwater hydrologists and special technical engineers and, you know, the full suite of people that you need to run that program. They also don't have the money or the ability to borrow money at a low interest rate to actually make the infrastructure investments that they need to ensure safe drinking water. You know, we just saw in the news, you know, this week, you know, that some of the councils are shutting down community services because they can't train enough lifeguards, you know, to service the pools. It's a lot harder to train an engineer than it is a lifeguard.
Yeah, true. So that comes down to a funding thing. There's a story, and I will bring it up, that we've talked about a couple of times. Local mayor down here in our neck of the woods, the Clutha mayor, the Gore district mayor. The reason that the Gore district mayor, Tracy Hicks, seems to be a bit of a fan of this, because you're talking specifically about they can't sustain it financially. The article reads, his district, being Gore, needs to spend more than $300 million on Three Waters infrastructure. So again, for people, forget the word Three Waters here, on infrastructure that holds drinking water, wastewater, and sewage. So that area has a $300 million bill coming in the next 10 years. That equates to $50,000 per ratepayer. So over 10 years, every ratepayer's rates will go up by $5,000 a year. Or they come on board with the government and they get the government to sort it out because they're one of the ones in trouble. So again, I don't know if you want to speak to that in particular, but that's a pretty good example of the economics of how councils can't manage this. Because when you say it as bluntly as that, I kind of go, well, what's even the pushback about this? If we're saying that councils literally don't have the funds and have no way of getting the funds unless they increase all our rates by tenfold, to be able to do this, then this seems to be the only solution. Is there another solution?
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, and just to touch on that sort of what the infrastructure deficit was not alone. I mean, the national deficit is estimated to be between 120 and 185 billion dollars that councils will have to come up with to ensure just adequate service provision for drinking water. Wow. So that's a major problem. And the reason why the amalgamation, which is, I don't know if I've touched on it, but they're proposing to amalgamate the 67 district councils and city councils into 4 different entities. And that amalgamation has been proposed because it creates efficiencies in the system that save money. It also enables those entities, because they have larger balance sheets, to actually have the debt against them at the lower interest rates for them to make that infrastructure investment. So it really, what it comes down to is an economic problem, but it's really solving a public health issue.
It's always, and look, this is possibly not the conversation we're going to have, but just a side note of a thought. It seems that what you're saying, when it's going into 4 big entities like that, it's almost being treated like big business. But the guys that are very pro big business don't want to see this happen. They'd rather have it in 67 small councils, which I always find a bit of a juxtaposition. The same guys who are always saying smaller government is better government, it seems like they're giving an opportunity to have smaller government in this, but they want bigger government all of a sudden. It's almost like it's inconsistent in their view, but that's just a personal opinion, Tim. I'm sure you don't want to professionally mention anything around that. I was going to ask you as well about the areas of contention that you talked about. Now, again, we're talking about public health with you specifically, but your data does talk about co-governance and privatisation. Can you expand on that as to what you found, as to why or maybe how that's an area of contention?
Yeah, we didn't have a huge amount of time in the piece to expand sort of the scope to talk about those issues in any great detail, but we are aware that a lot of, when you ask the question about why there's pushback against the Free Waters reforms, it's because there is some contention around how these entities should be governed and whether or not local voices, local democracy has been lost in the amalgamation of these water assets. So that's one quite big problem. And one of the proposals is that there should be equal representations from mana whenua and council executives to make sure that they're upholding the principles of the treaty. And we have lots of examples of co-governance and how it's actually working in environmental policy. And so on that issue, I would say that if we are serious about upholding the principles in the treaty and we look at environmental policy and see the beneficial outcomes it's having, co-governance is a must. And so that is one area that deserves a lot of attention. We could spend a lot of time talking about it, but wasn't really the focus of the piece. The second element that we talked about was privatisation, because people often think that the amalgamation of these assets into 4 entities opens up the case that they could be privatised.
Yeah.
And so then people would be having to pay for water and they'd be run as commercial entities outside of public ownership. And this is a very valid concern in terms of we definitely don't want to see water privatisation in New Zealand. What we did touch on there, though, is that there are mechanisms in the legislation that protect against privatisation. So, for example, for those assets to be privatised, every single council within the area has to agree to it. So one council can veto the entire privatisation bid. Say all the councils want it to happen, then the boards of the entities, which are half represented by councils and mana whenua, would have to get 75% of the board to agree to the privatisation. So you need all the councils on board, you need all, or at least 75% of the executive board. And then if those 2 things are met, then you have to put it to a public referendum. So then 75% of people within the area have to agree to privatisation. So there are really strong safeguards against privatisation in the bill. One way that they could improve that is that they make those clauses entrenched, which means that then you would have to have 75% of Parliament agree to change any of those clauses. Because at the moment, if you just had a simple majority, you could change some of those clauses in the bill.
Right.
So it is worth thinking about how we can actually safeguard the safeguards.
I suspect the question I'm about to ask is not scholarly at all. Maybe it's the opposite. But I mean, what I kind of have heard from other people, and you're kind of echoing it in a much more academic way, is that councils have ballsed it up for such a long time. They haven't put the money into the infrastructure they should have. They've given them results like we saw in Havelock North. I guess the public's now sitting back going, okay, something needs to be done, but what's to say the government's not just going to balls it up? Are we at a point now where we have to try something because the current status can't be fixed and won't be fixed, and so really the government's the only option? Or what about the concerns that, you know, government entities fail, government entities make mistakes, that they're just going to become a balls up but magnified 400% because they're so much bigger in one group rather than smaller groups?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think what we've done is we've gone through 5 years of thinking about this and discussing and consulting on the best approach. You know, the economic analysis is pretty certain about what the best approach is, and amalgamation is the way forward. I think if we were to do nothing, that's the greatest risk, both to public health and to the effective functioning of our water assets. So something has to be done. This has been the best solution proposed out of a bad lot, I'd probably say. And yeah, like I say, we can't really miss this sort of once in a generation opportunities to reform our water assets.
And I guess, again, not to get political with you, but if, for example, this doesn't happen now, you say once in a generation, and National was to run the government next time around, and they're against the idea, then it might be in 15 or 20 years' time. It's not 300 million that has to get put in by ratepayers in a particular area. It's $1 billion, because literally still nothing's been done. And I guess I don't want to get political with you. I'm not going to put you in that position. But what I will do is actually read out the conclusion of your conclusion, and then give you kind of the last word, which says the amalgamation proposed in the WSE bill provides an opportunity to resolve previous systemic flaws outlined in the government inquiry into Havelock North and future-proof our three waters. Most importantly, the proposed system improvements in the efficacy and efficiency of our three waters will protect public health and hold the right to clean, safe water. A bunch of you authors from the Department of Public Health, University of Otago, Wellington. Anything else you want to add to that conclusion of the conclusion?
No, that's great. I mean, what we usually like to say as well is that access to clean, safe drinking water is a fundamental human right, and we really should need to make sure that here in New Zealand that we're upholding that right.
We will put a link to your scholarly blog in the description of this video as well, so people can go check it out, and all those references in there as well. But for now, Dr. Tim Chambers, Department of Public Health, University of Otago, Wellington. Hey, thanks so much for joining us, mate. It's been a real pleasure. I appreciate your thoughts.
Much appreciated. Thanks, Pat.
Alrighty, Mighty. I really appreciate you, Chewy. I love looking at you getting into it and having chats and talking to people in the chat. It's kind of cool.
It's been really interesting.
Look, do you want to share anything?
Well, I hope he doesn't mind me putting some words in it. We had someone in the chat on YouTube come in pretty hot, and it's a name that I haven't seen in chat before, and that was the person that was sort of going on. I think you spoke to it before. But it's ended up being this really tangential conversation about, I guess if I was to paraphrase it, individualism. You know, I just follow my own gut, and I won't be governed. You know, I don't follow laws because they're laws. I follow my own sense of not being a dumbass and hurting people. And it's morphed into this conversation about collective good versus individualism, and whether government's good, and how money corrupts everything. And my God, if you were watching the camera, I may have been rummaging in my room for something. Polita Kiwi, you called me out.
I have to be honest. When I'm playing those interviews out, I'm very much focused on making sure nothing crashes and to keep an eye on the thing. But I want to say something that I kind of hinted at before the conversation about what community is. And community is, we're only as strong as our weakest unit, or our weakest chain, whatever that saying is. But also, I get that there are groups around New Zealand who are going, and I've heard a Dunedin councillor put this out there tonight, that you know, we've got good infrastructure, and well, we don't want to be a part of this. And I'm like, but when the quakes hit Christchurch, yeah, the rest of the country didn't go, well, fuck, they didn't hit here. You know, there was a collective good. We all started paying more for our insurances because of the insurance companies, what they had to spend in Christchurch. You know, there was more in taxes to go into Christchurch, and we all work together to bring everything up. It's that idea of a rising tides lifts all boats. If you've got good infrastructure, then you should be happy you've got good infrastructure. It means that your pavements, your roads aren't going to be torn up for the next 10 or 20 years with this group coming in and doing some fixing, because now they've got the money from a centralized group to be able to do it. It means you get to live your life and continue on, and other people are going to be put through the rigmarole around having to get theirs fixed up. But I don't abide by this. I don't like this idea of, you know, ours is fine, so fuck you, because that's I am a bit of a socialist or a communist or whatever. I'm completely not, but I do like the idea of community. I like the idea that we look after people who we need to look after. The thing that I hate about it's really the right in America is this whole individualistic, don't tread on me, mine, my rights, my, get out of my way, it's me, don't tread on me. It's like, actually, you know, don't tread on us. You know, it's our rights. We want to work together. And I just see this, and I might be being a little bit of flower power child here saying it in this kind of way, but this is just on some level. And look, okay, I'm being a bit naive because I haven't broken down into the numbers and we don't have somebody to push back against what I'm saying. But on some level, the biggest pushback I seem to be hearing about is co-governance, and that seems to be steeped in racism.
Yes, it's a dog whistle now.
Yeah,
and that took hold real quick.
And also the idea of, well, we're fine. Fuck them, we're fine. It's like it's just ugly. You know, I think so often I had this conversation with someone around gender issues. Actually, I think it was with Professor Dave this morning around gender issues. And one of the reasons I tend to lean left, like or rip over the left way in the distance, is that even on issues where I kind of go, oh, I don't think you've got the right end of the stick there. The left, in my perspective, and it's not just my perspective, tends to approach things from a community, let's be okay, let's be safe, let's be together, I want to look after you, I want us to look after each other aspect. The right tends to approach things from, don't you fucking tell me what to do, me, mine, don't tread on me, mine, my rights. And I always feel like, and I'm not being naive because I know it's not as black and white as I'm saying, but I always feel like I want to go with the people where it feels like where the good hearts are, you know, and even though there's a lot on the left that I think is ridiculous and disagree with and would probably be thrown out of the left once people find out more about them, which they will during these shows. I lean that way a lot of the time because I mean, for want of a better phrase from my religious upbringing, I want to look after the widows and orphans.
Yep.
And that's where you get it. You get it on the left. On the right, you get, you know, pull them up by the bootstraps, you know, no handouts, no, and it just doesn't fly with me. But in saying all of that, I also acknowledge that, you know, the left is up for plenty of criticism at times and the right can be congratulated at times. And it's what we do here. We say it all the time. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. We may sit somewhere politically, ideologically, but it doesn't mean we can't go, that's horseshit, my political ideological side. And that's really good, my opposing political ideological side.
Hey, Pat.
Yeah.
We've done it again.
Hour and a half.
We're an hour 30 into our hour-long podcast.
All right. Now, I wanted to remind people next week, Monday night is our episode number 100. I have actually had, and Politikiwi is right there in the text right now. Me and Politikiwi were talking today. He's a bit of a whiz on the old Discord. And he's been helping us set up some Discordy bits and bobs. I don't know if this will be working for Monday. Look, even there's a share our shit section, bro. Share our shit section, and there's all sorts of bits and pieces. There's even been rules that I haven't even looked at the rules. I've got to find out what the rules for my own fucking Discord are, Chewy. But apparently we're not allowed to use the F word, the N word, the T word, and the R word. I'm not entirely sure what the T word is, maybe what the R word, but we're not going to use them. But big shout out and big thanks to Politikiwi who came in today and he started setting this all up for us. And in an ideal world, We probably will try and get that going by Monday night. And if you're with us for our 100th show, we might even see if we can get some people. Do you call it calling in on Discord? I don't even know the terminology for it. But allow people to then communicate with us directly. Chewy, I'm pretty sure this is right to say this. Chewy and George will be here. You're going to be here, Chewy?
Oh, absolutely. We want to talk about conspiracies. I'm going to have an adult beverage or two. Let's get fucking messy.
And there'll probably be some people who are regulars dropping in as well. I mean, the likes of Anna Brooks, I'd probably say, come along and stick your head in, but she just did. She might not want to. But, I think Jeremy Elwood said he's going to stick his head in, and hopefully Penny will be able to too. And I might go to a few of the regulars that have been in several times and say, if you want to stick your head in, feel free. You're more than welcome. The other thing for everyone to know and remind you for next week, and I won't play I played the trailer last night and it got us demonetized. We got demonetized on YouTube. We didn't get our 8 cents for that one because of our numbers. I know. Is that next week I am talking to Alex Holder. Alex Holder, the documentary filmmaker of Unprecedented, which is I think it's a 10-part documentary series showing right now on 3, and it's from international, it might be HBO. And it is the guy who got into the White House and got to film Trump and his family as they were losing the election. So he's Alex Holder. I'm talking to him next week. I'm talking to him in my podcast sense. But if it's appropriate, next Friday night, I might just replay it because it'll be pretty cool. It'll be pretty cool. So talking to a guy who spent 6 months with Trump and filmed him and then got called into the January 6th committee, and some of his footage from his documentary got used by the January 6th committee. So talking to him next week as well. So you want to let people know. Actually, you don't want to let anyone know. But I said this last night, Joey. Don't let anyone know about that because I think it's a bit of a coup. I don't think anyone else in New Zealand has interviewed him. And if other people find out how to get a hold of him, maybe someone like fucking 3 will gazump me. So don't tell anybody about that.
No,
I'm just telling you.
Secret.
That's not what that one's not to be passed around.
You're in the inner circle, platinum pass. The secret circle.
Is there anything else we need to get out there?
No, I think that's everything, mate.
We've got
big hand to the chat tonight. It's been fun.
Is there anything you want to? They're all talking to each other, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
I was going to anything you want to show. Well, I mean, the other thing is, so you guys know, there's 3 of us who kind of do this. There's me and there's Chewy and there's George. Me and George have kind of moderator access to the system we use. They're only allowed to have 2 people, so Chewy doesn't at the moment. And we might flip that around when we figure out a way to have another person, so then Chewy can put things up on screen as well. But I struggle with keeping up with the chat when I'm also doing everything else. Chewy is fantastic in the chat, but he's unable to put things up on the screen as easily as I am. So it's a bit of a balls up there, but we'll sort that out.
But once they get unfettered power, it's going to change.
Yep. Actually, and speaking of unfettered power, that whole Discord thing. In fact, Politikiwi, you're in there. I don't even know how people fucking find it, but this is the kind of page thing. It's called BHN. Politikiwi, how people find it? Tell people how if you know Discord.
Through it now, I don't think it's live, is it?
Oh, well, how are you looking through it if it's not live?
I'm not looking at it. I was looking for it.
Oh, okay. I don't know. I'm going to put
something for Politikiwi to tell us how to do it.
Okay. I'm just looking at things. Anyway, look, worst case scenario, actually follow me on Twitter. That's a really good one. Or follow the Big Hairy News Facebook page. And as soon as it's live or active and ready for people to whatever the words are, become members of. Click on the link. Click on the link. That's what he said. Click on the link. It doesn't help me. I'm trying to find the link.
The link?
I don't know.
You're talking to 2 elder millennials.
Invite people. Okay. Let's do this. Copy.
Oh.
Is that right? And I'll put it in the chat. Shall I do that? Am I doing something wrong here? I feel like I need Politikiwi's permission to do this in case I'm ballsing it up. There you go. I'll just put the link in the chat. Try to put the link in the chat. Oh, there you go. I'll just put the Discord link in the chat. Now that apparently might change. I don't know any of that kind of stuff. But that's in there if people want to go along and follow, join.
Yay,
oh, look at that.
It's working.
Ghost of Gallipoli is in there now as well. So yeah, we'll start using that. It will be set up eventually. If not for Monday, we're going to aim for Monday, but if not for Monday, is a way that you guys can then call in and we can have a chat with you. What are we doing our thing? Last calls at the end of the night or something like that.
Still need to buy a gong.
Oh, well, no, I'll just do the sound effects, bro. I've got a studio. All right. We're talking about absolute bullshit nothing now. So we're going to go. Thanks, team. We'll see you Monday night. Remember, it's the 100th episode. Oh, look, more people joining up. Good. You NZ Heretic just jumped in there as well. Join us for the 100th episode on Monday night. I suspect there'll be no news talked about. It'll be a bit of fun. Come and hang out. Tell your friends. And remember, for all you journalists who are watching this, give us lots of exposure on Monday to get more people along to sign up as we continue towards our 1000th episode, which is just around the corner because it goes 100, then the next holiday is 1000. So there you go. All right, guys, be safe. We will see you Monday night at 10 p.m. for episode 100. All right.